this camera stand is going to hold up, but
I'm recording on
mine.
mine.
Okay, cool. Right, hello there. Welcome to Get to the Horror. As usual, I'm Easty. Sunday, say hi.
Hello. Good evening.
Shad, say hello.
Good evening. Good evening.
And Hamza.
Should I have stole my bit? I was gonna do a Jeff Goldblum as well.
Hey, you can do it, man. You can
No,
do
I
whatever
don't want
you
to.
want to do.
I'll do someone else. But I can't think of anyone. God damn it. But hey, how you doing?
I've just realised something. The Fly. I've just realised something. I never took down the year of this film. The Fly is a 1986.
86.
86.
Today we're doing The Fly. As ever, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this 1986 film, an absolute classic, then stop the podcast, get on it, and then come back and rejoin us. Today with the synopsis is Hamza.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's going to do it in the voice of Jeff Goldblum. I don't know if it's decided yet, but take it away, man.
Are we gonna have a vote? Who wants to hear it in Jeff Goldblum?
It would take a week.
Do your best.
Okay. I'll see what I can do. Scientist Seth Brundle, Jeff Goldblum, experimenting with a transmitting matter, uses himself as a guinea pig. Okay, forget it. I'm just going to read the rest of it. Unaware that a fly has got into the machinery, as he embarks on a relationship with Veronica Queef, or Queef. That's a bit of a weird name to be fair. Gina Davis, the journalist covering his project. His body slowly starts to take on the characteristics of a fly. So, shall I get this cracking? Or how do you want to do it?
Go for it, man. Crack.
Yeah, so go for it. Would you?
I will give you just like referring to the previous.
Sound like Arnie then. I will give you it.
Going back to what we were. Arnie, obviously an Arnie porno. Obviously what he was saying to the maid. But anyway, so you like that?
No,
yeah, thanks, man. Just like we were saying with the Dracula, how watching it again as an adult, there was things I didn't notice. It kind of feels like a weird, dark origin movie of what had become the superhero tropes in a film. So, the mad scientist, kind of similar to something like a Bruce Banner or, Peter Parker or something like this. And then a terrible accident happens to them and then they kind of mutate. Or actually, even more likely, Kurt Connors, the Lizard, for all those Marvel fans out there. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel actually took on a lot of inspiration from that. Because just like the original Fly movie from the 50s, Kurt Connors was always wearing that lab coat. Now, I don't know if you guys have watched the original Fly, but that was kind of the iconography. He literally had a fly head and he was rocking a lab coat.
Yeah, the lab coat.
Yeah. So yeah, possibly there could be some crossover there, some splicing, if you will. See what I did? But yeah, one thing I would say, I didn't realize how kind of sad Brundle's story actually is. He almost feels like a porn. The two characters, I forgot their names now. Veronica and her weirdo ex.
The douche. 80s douche man.
Douche man.
See, the thing is, their names are so weird.
Yeah.
So I almost
Stafford.
It's Stafford Borans, Veronica Queef, and Seth Brundle.
They're too weird to be fake. They're too weird to be fake.
Every time I look at their names, I think it's an acrid, like some sort of like puzzle.
These are people that Cronenberg knows. And he's probably just changed one or two letters from their names so that, it's fiction.
Yeah, because Quaif There's no one called Quaif out there.
I don't know anyone called Quaif.
Seth sounds a lot like Jeff, doesn't it?
No, but Seth. To be fair, Seth is a real name.
Hey,
Yeah.
Seth is-
I know, but
Quaif.
Seth sounds a lot like Jeff.
Staffis. It sounds like names from a Staffis. Sounds like a blooming
Disease.
I don't know, Game of Thrones character.
Yeah, they are terrible names. They're not like catchy, like most AT movies are. Like, hey, there's Duke, there's Josh. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Basically, the name's not John, so you're not gonna remember it.
But yeah, as I was saying, he almost feels like a pawn between the kind of silly bickering and this silly kind of messy relationship they've had. He's almost like thrown in the middle of it, which is really quite sad. Because obviously the douchebag doesn't want to let go of her. And ultimately, again, yes, Jeff Goldblum's character did do something very irresponsible. But I almost felt like if the douchebag wasn't involved, it wouldn't have led to the events that turned him into the Fly, if that makes any sense. So he kind of felt like a bit of a puppet on the string. But that's just how I just looked at it as an adult, I suppose. But those are my initial thoughts of the movie. But I'm sure we're going to go into greater detail about the rest of it.
Hyundai, your initial thoughts?
So where do we begin? This is an iconic film. It's a very iconic film. It's one that I remember watching as a young boy, and now watching it again. Hans is right. There are things you don't notice when you're younger that you may pay attention to now. I feel like the film is fun, and it's fun. The film is fun, but I think there are some issues with the film that watching it now I can't really get around, and that's namely the characters and their character motivations. I think is a massive hole in the way that this film has been put together, and I think ultimately makes the film weak in certain areas where it could have been much stronger.
Message for a guy, Steve, bite your tongue. Steve.
The visual effects I think are amazing. The practical effects are top notch. I really like what David Cronenberg does with the camera. We all know this is body horror, but what he does is that he never lets your eyes linger on it for too long. In most cases, right? The real shocking stuff, you never get to see it for too long. It's just enough for you to kind of get that initial loop, but then your mind fills in the rest. I think that's used to great effect. And there are some really cool messages in the film, which I think ultimately get lost in the way that this particular version of the story has been executed. Two things that stick out being when Jeff, and I'm going to call him Jeff because I think Jeff Goldblum is basically just being Jeff Goldblum in this. When Jeff comes out of the transporter in front of Tawny, the girl he picks up at the bar, and she's like, are you a magician? And he's like, yes. In that line, you captured this whole idea of the hubris of the scientist, his character kind of billowing out to show his arrogance and everything else. And it also, in a sense, is quite a forward-thinking line in the sense of how we approach technology today. We don't really understand the nuts and bolts of the technology we use, and it is borderline magic. We know it's not magic, but it's borderline magic in terms of how people actually use it and perceive it. Stuff like that I think is quite cool. The fact that he feels he has to destroy himself to become his true self. But as I said, unfortunately, a lot of it gets lost in
plenty of
that's probably something we'll delve into a little bit more. But those are my thoughts watching it. But it was fun watching it again.
Shants, your thoughts?
So for me, I've never watched this.
Stop everything right now.
I can say that I was very entertained, and a way I know that I'm entertained by a movie is I watch it from start to finish. And even with this one, I'll either watch it from start to finish or I'll watch it in 2 parts. Yeah. And I managed to watch this twice as well. I think, like what Tunde said, there are some hidden lessons to be learned and some things that the character, I'll call him Seth, comes out with. I had a particular favorite line in the film, is when Seth said to Veronica when she didn't want to go into the teleportation device, afraid to dive into the plasma pool. And for me, that was it was a pretty cool line, because the lesson it shows here is, don't be afraid to venture out there, get out of your comfort zone, and go do stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Because I think it was Bruce Lee who said, we're more afraid of not to these exact words, we're more afraid of what we are capable of doing rather than what we're not capable of doing, something to that effect. And in a way, it's kind of true. I think most of the time we're afraid to go out there and put ourselves out there, whether it be dating a girl or a boy, or getting a new job or whatever. It's because we're too afraid. But perhaps we're too afraid of being too successful at it rather than the other way around. But anyway, there's a lot of arrogance in this film. Like there was that particular scene where the douche, where Seth was like to the girl, is he still in love with you, the douchebag? And she turned around and said, well, how can he not be? It's like that.
Yeah, but if you see the look on her face after that, like she's joking, but she doesn't realise the joke has kind of missed the mark a little bit.
Yeah.
The joke was a bad idea. I recognise a lot of myself in that. The amount of bad ideas for jokes I tell. I mean, as you guys know, I work in the day with Shads, and a lot of the times in the meetings, I'll get a message for her going, Stephen, bite your tongue. Stephen, don't say anything. Because he knows that I'm going to say something, some joke or something inappropriate that everyone needs to not hear. So that's the vibe I got from her on that.
But all in all, it is an entertaining film. There's plenty of action, plenty of scenes where you will turn away. To this one unfortunate baboon that we end up seeing. And it's, again, for me, it was an entertaining film, and I think if you haven't watched it, definitely go out there and watch it.
So my thoughts, watching this again, I've realised that I'm never going to be happy until there's a film called The Human, which is the fly's perspective, where he's just minding his business. He gets caught up in some human antics, and all of a sudden he sees himself turning into a human. Then I'll be truly, truly happy with this movie. But that aside, this film actually, I mean, the first one we did with Alien, I just adore that anyway. Second one, as I said, I will probably never watch that again. I'm done. This one, I actually found the more I watched it, the more I want. I've watched it 3 times now. The first time I was like, and then the second time I was more interested. And the third time, weirdly, I was even more interested. I don't know what that signifies, but
the pacing is amazing. Honestly,
yeah,
it's so good.
Sunday mentioned the camera, and what I quite liked is when it wasn't sort of horror, he gets close to the characters a lot of the time with the camera, but not crazy so. Like you're having a conversation with Seth and Veronica, and he's actually quite zoomed in on Seth with Veronica there. You don't. I don't know if it was just me, but I don't see those shots a lot in films. They often split between one talker or another. You don't see them.
It's claustrophobic.
The opening scene, literally the second shot is it's a close-up of Seth, Jeff's face, and the next shot is Veronica. And that is a very unorthodox way to start a film, because you'll normally have your establishing shots to show your scenery and your setting. And, we're in New York, we're in this town or that town, and it's this building and that building. But it started just with that, which essentially, like Stephen's saying, it gives you almost like it's bringing you directly into these characters, their conversation.
And did you, the start, you've got that blurry, you've got the crowd, the party, it's blurred, it's all colour as the names are coming up. Did you see that at the start of the film? That's a fly's view.
Perspective,
Yeah. and the different segments of the eye sort of thing. Or at least that's I don't know for sure, but that's what I got from that. And I only really picked that up on the second time of watching. I love the design of the pods. Like again, and I love a lot. There are so many films that can save a lot of money by just keeping the locations simple.
Yeah.
You know, and this film nails it because a good majority of the action really is in just one place.
Yeah.
And like you said about pacing and stuff, it doesn't really let up. It's not action packed, but it's going on, and even the sort of blip time passes because you do know that they've been in a relationship while it's been testing this for a while, you know. But you don't realise that necessarily straight away. But then, you know, that it does it really well. It does it seamlessly, I think, to get to the point. I do think I find her really irritating in the end. I know she loved him. I know they were close, but the woman. That ain't your man anymore. That's the cross reading of a teleporting machine and a fly, and I am not going to get cut up about blowing his head off.
It did make me laugh when she hesitated to blow his head off, as if to say, maybe his fate is all right.
You're having a conversation with Seth.
The skill change.
Considering he tried to put her in a telepod as well to merge them together. I mean, and there's not even a resemblance of the man he was. He is full on fly. It's not as if he was full on fly with a little bit of a goatee that he had in his actual life. You know, he's fully flyed up at that point. The guy's going down.
I'm going to jump on that as well and basically say, because you said I know that she loves him. I genuinely felt that was also part of the issue. I know they're in a relationship. I know it. I just don't feel it.
Oh, seriously?
I did. No, I really did. I thought the love between them was. I thought her acting, like Gina Davis, was good.
I found myself. This is how lame I got. I found myself smiling when they were like, when Jeff was like, "So this is a romance," and I was like, "Oh, this is so sweet."
Yeah,
so
a bunch of sweet boys.
I think
look, we can't all be a player like you, Tunde. I'm sorry. My player days are over. I've got bad knees, bad hips. Things are falling apart. I no longer play.
I think Seth's character is really relatable, and that's why you kind of do, you just kind of feel for him. You know what he's going through. Especially when it almost like he goes, he's in love with this science, then he's in love with this woman. Then he goes back to loving the science because he feels betrayed by the woman. It's all relatable. It's all very relatable. All to Seth in our lifetime.
When he goes through the pod himself, I could massively relate to that because jealousy is a hell of a thing, and it will make you do ridiculous stuff. And I have stories. I'm sure we'll share them over a pint at some point. But I have done some pretty crazy stuff out of jealousy or love. And so when he sends himself through, he's obviously drunk. He's obviously sort of beside himself because he's worried that he's losing someone he genuinely cares about. And so at that point, he's like, he's very, a lot of the time, and I know it's Jeff Goldblum, and Jeff Goldblum plays Jeff Goldblum in any film, but a lot of the time I saw his character in Jurassic Park. And I can see why they cast him, because from The Fly, that is pure chaos theory. That's absolute chaos.
There's something behind you.
Yes, there's a cat. I shall let him out. Bear with me a sec. There's always something with me.
We let the cats out. Meow. Meow.
Wow. Because you know that scene where he's in the cafe and then he's like, waiter, and then he smashes the table down.
Yeah. He's super excited.
That scene in Jurassic Park when he's like, and now you packaged it, and now you're selling it.
So I'll be honest with you guys. In my notes, I was writing up some notes as I was watching the film, and then I literally stopped and created a section just called Jeffisms. Right? Because I genuinely think, I understand what everybody's saying, the relatability. I don't think that's a relatability to Seth. I think that's a relatability to Jeff.
I love to
think that's Jeff Goldblum's performance in this is hands down what carries this film's humanity. He does bring a relatable charm, an accessible charm to it in his performance. To the point where, like, I think one of the biggest another weakness of the film is at the end when she does have the choice between weird ET bug thing and life. You don't really feel it because I'm sure someone will probably correct me. Actually, it was Jeff Goldblum in the suit. I don't know, but you just didn't really feel it like when she was actually interacting with Jeff, and even Jeff's mannerisms, like the way his eyes were moving, the twitches, and all of these things really cool. That he brought into it. Brought you into the role, I think it was Jeff, the coffee shop, like Shad is saying, where he basically just dishes out a dialogue, like an unceasing barrage of almost like a stream of consciousness.
I feel like that was almost freestyle.
It seemed like it could have been
freestyle. Yeah. He actually speaks like that in real life. That's the thing.
Yeah. But
I don't know if you've ever seen him on Instagram or Facebook or anything, or just his interviews. He's very articulate. He's very colorful in his language. He actually speaks like that. So I think someone was like, when he was saying it, they were like, hey, "Where's the script? What? You're telling me he's just saying this stuff?"
Like, shall I cut it? No. Let him go.
Keep it going.
But, that's what you take on, isn't it? A director would have seen Jeff and gone, that's my scientist. Like you get Jeff Goldblum to be Jeff Goldblum. He's perfect in Jurassic Park and he's perfect in this. But just because we'll talk about cast in a bit. What did you think of this?
Cracks me up so much. When. Okay, no, not really. Okay, basically that bit where the guy, the douchebag guy, Stathis, and Jeff throws up on his hand, and it's kind of like he's going. Ooh.
Yeah. He does, doesn't he? There's that scene, isn't it, where the woman comes, where Veronica's there, and then he eats something, and then he goes, "Bleh," and then he goes,
So, first to Shaz, a question to us all: what do we think of it visually? So, the costumes, the sets. How did you feel? So start with Shaz.
I think it captures, the 80s. Not so much 80s punk era, more like 80s everyday. What I mean by that is, in other 80s movies like RoboCop or whatever, you had the punk era, all of that kind of style. Whereas this 80s is, like how we would be dressed and walking and talking but in the 80s era, very normal, I'd say. Even when he goes to the bars, you don't see people with wacky hairstyles and this, that, and the other. It's just that the normal 80s, I suppose, as you would call it.
I suppose if this was 86, then we're getting, sort of closer to the 90s.
Yeah.
So a lot of that kind of is sort of starting to phase out. So maybe that's actually a good sort of visual of that kind of effect.
Yeah. Even with the cars, it was very much, practical looking cars. And so for me, visually, the film, I particularly liked where the lab was located, industrial site, and this guy is living in his lab, but he's almost got like an apartment converted lab thing going on. It was very cool, very, very nice. Yeah.
Hamza, what about you with the visuals?
The visuals you kind of touched on a little bit earlier. There is like 3 locations in this movie. I might maybe miss one. Give or take. There's the lab. There's the guy's office, douchebag's office, and Veronica's flat.
What is douchebag's name?
Douchebag. Douchebag.
Right. Douchey McDouchebag for the clan McDouchebag.
Pretty much.
So yeah, it almost has a stage. Maybe I'm being like hyperbolic here, but I don't think I am. To be fair, I think it has kind of almost a stage vibe about it. Very minimal locations. Minimal costumes, like Shadab said. And so when you see the supernatural stuff happening, it makes it seem even more bizarre. Like it's almost like a fever dream when you see it, because there's this very realistic backdrop, and you're seeing this wild stuff happening, and you're like, I can't explain it. It does give it a very strange feeling that, okay, I can only go back to the films that we've watched, because they're very much in stylized worlds, if that makes any sense. So when you see the weird or the alien, if you will, you're like, okay, I can buy that they all exist in the same world. But this is so weird in this normal everyday, backdrop, that the terror feels more palpable for some reason. I don't know. That's how I felt about it anyway. Like for example, the pods as well. The pods have this kind of very understated look. Remember when she even comes into the room, she's like, yeah, so where are they? And he's like, yeah, they're there. They're just very understated. And I thought that was cool. But I would say one thing, man, a lot of this money must have gone into the visuals. And obviously that baboon's a paycheck, man, because the baboon played two roles, technically. He played the brother and
hardest working baboon in Hollywood.
No monkeys were turned inside out in the making of this movie.
But yeah, it's if there was one thing, I know we usually leave this to the end. If there was one thing I would say, and obviously it's just because it's of the time. When we get to the animatronic fly, the design is amazing. It looks great, but I didn't buy that it was this very strong, very fast, nimble kind of thing. Like
a rolled newspaper could have taken that thing out.
Yeah, that was the thing. Because when we had Jeff in the kind of just before he completely went fly, he was still in that suit. He was still very nimble. He was still kind of like, he could just pounce at you anytime. It was very unpredictable, especially with the twitching and stuff. Yeah. That kind of disappeared when he was just the fly animatronic, which is unfortunate. Again, it's just because of the time it was made in. But I feel like, unfortunately, if it was CGI, that would probably be a case where I think CGI probably would have been better. Because we like, as much as I hate to admit, CGI does help now and again. I don't think it works in everything, but that was a case where I think, because you could have, mocapped Jeff Goldblum's twitches and had it in the CG model with the fly.
Well, I think we'll get to this when we talk about whether it should be remade. But while you were saying that, I was just in my head just thinking of a remade version. I think it would miss some of the points and be very bombastic these days. It'd be huge. The fly would be flitting around all over the place. People would be getting rolled out newspapers to try and take it out. But anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. But Tunde, so the visuals, what do you think to it all?
Yeah, so let me start by saying I actually think that for the most part, the photography and camera work of the film is kind of underwhelming. There's not really a lot going on. I don't think they got the best out of all of the settings, maybe because away from the warehouse apartment thing, maybe there were some logistical errors in how they could set up or something like that. I just never really felt that the camera work was that great, except when in the warehouse. And in the warehouse, I think it was very different. I think that's where the film truly comes alive. Like everyone said, that's where the majority of the action takes place. But the environment never feels stale. It never feels boring because they use the space quite well and they move the camera through that space quite well. And the space is also lit really well. What I noticed is that there is a very strong use of blue, particularly after he comes out of the transporter. And, it's in the visual language, it's like saying now we're entering into this introspective part, where the threat comes from the inside. But it also adds this kind of cold and unreceptive element to Jeff's character. So he comes out of the transporter, Veronica comes onto him, and the whole thing is doused in blue tones. And we know that obviously he's now part man, part fly, but it explains a sort of new callous, this new callous aspect to his character. Other than that, the visual effects, the practical effects, I think were really great. Nothing I could say about those. The baboon turning inside out, a great practical effect. The blood effects were great. The fingernails, all of that kind of,
the pus.
Yeah, all of those things that just make you kind of go oof, and make you recoil were. And bear in mind, this is in the 80s. I think they handled it I think the limits of what you can pull off meant that it came out very well, because I think today there'll be too much of an urge to gratuitously show the entire thing. I think they show you just enough that you can get a sense for what is about to happen, and you can kind of paint in the rest with that. But yeah, I'll say that's pretty much it. Also, it's kind of weird in these 80s films, like, who actually lives in a warehouse?
Many 80s characters.
Many 80s people live in warehouses, apparently.
I would like to live in a warehouse.
No, it did look like a pretty cool place to live. But I got the impression.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was that
It looked like a cool place to
yeah,
live.
it did look like a cool place, but think about it this way: in this day and age, oh, you just met somebody. Oh, where'd you live? Yeah, just around the corner. And the taxi starts driving into like an industrial estate.
I would say,
One time the taxi driver starts to get really nervous.
Yeah.
I will say, I do love that in the beginning where, his tenacity to get the girl to come back to his place is pretty cool, because he's like, well, you could come back to my place. And then she's like, nah, I've got loads of other things to do. And he's like, yeah, but they're not working on what I'm working on, and
it's very playful.
I can relate to days of clubbing.
You need to have game to get somebody to come to that
dirty
part of town. Exactly.
No, I realised I didn't need game. I just needed chloroform. Anyway, incidentally, movie depictions of chloroform are completely wrong. You have to
don't get me
over
started.
the face for freaking ages to get them to knock out.
And drugs as well.
Yeah.
One hit of the drug.
That's another subject
Exactly.
when we see a film use that stuff. Anyway, my take on the visuals. I think I've already said I love the sets. I do love when some horror films keep things simple. So I could name like things like Dog Soldiers. A good majority of Dog Soldiers takes place in a cottage. It's. I think it's a great way if the plot and the story and the and whatnot, the script is good. That's when you get away with it.
Yeah, Evil Dead does it as
the
well.
dialogue. Yeah, the dialogue, and you kind of live and breathe. You can see. So his home seemed lived in. He was a warehouse, obviously, but it seemed very much in key with him as a person. Slightly chaotic, sort of all over the place. You kind of see how sort of messy it is when she goes to the kitchen at one scene. I think he's already in the fly, partially. He doesn't realise yet, but it's like that's. I really do enjoy that set. And in actual fact, I always found it jarring whenever they went to anywhere else, Brighter or whatever. They went to her flat or the office sort of thing. I much preferred that sort of dark enclosed thing. I think the fact that the visuals can make us feel gross even now, because there are certain points with the nails and stuff where I'm like, oh, his teeth.
Yeah.
One day we'll get to the movie The Thing, and The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, nails this so well that it still mostly holds up. And I'm not actually a massive fan of CGI. I've seen it used right, but for whatever reason, it doesn't age well. But some practical effects, some animatronic effects age really, really well. And I do actually think this is a good example of it. I do think it fell, like you said, when he's the full fly, he's actually at his slowest almost.
Yeah. Which is weird. Yeah.
But that definitely reminded me of Alien when he's like, yeah, I think those kind of things show that the effect is good, the visual is good, but they can't quite pull it off yet. They can't make it fast. They can't make it speed. They can't add CGI to change the elements.
Yeah, to enhance it.
It's clunky, and I think that's the only time I think it didn't visually age well. But other than that, I do, as I said, I watched it 3 times, and every time I found it more insane. I was noticing a few more little details, and I think visually it still holds up. And again, if it's grossing you out now, and it's from 1986. Whoever did the stuff of that, tip of the hat,
They won awards. They won awards for the design.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, it looks great. Still
So
does.
I'll start this next one because I've only got a brief thing to say about it, and I'm sure we all have. But the sound, I found the music actually, like there's a soundtrack you can get. The music's kind of good, but I actually kind of irritated me. There were certain points where it cut off. Like there was this point where the music sounded pretty good, and then just silence and it was such a jarring juxtaposition between good sort of sound in the background to nothing. And I thought the initial sound, like the actual soundtrack itself, isolated, sounds pretty good, but I don't think the sound quality actually on this movie holds up all that well now. As I said, watched it 3 times, and every time that was one of my biggest irritations with the movie. I found it slightly off-putting in parts. I think, you know how if you don't have like surround sound and that, so you're watching on your a movie on your TV, sometimes the music escalates crazy, especially like we've got kids. So if we're watching a movie and we've got it set to a nice tone, and then all of a sudden the music kicks off, then the sound volume goes way up. I do think the mixing on this is not great. I found it quite jarring. But Tunde, what do you think? What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I'll agree in the sense that I think the sound mixing perhaps wasn't the best. What I would say about the sound, obviously, not so much about sound, but the scoring, the soundtrack for the film.
More like
the soundtrack is actually what holds this film together. I think without the soundtrack, without the score chosen, I don't think some of the scenes would. I think the film could lurch into comedy. I think the timing of the score and the type of the score really does almost command you to feel a certain way about certain scenes, even though some actors, their performances really weren't carrying that scene or really weren't selling you on the tension. But the score does a good job of telling you, informing you that, okay, this is a tense moment or this is a dramatic moment. I actually think the score is almost too good for the film. I think the score could easily be moved to another film and be excellent. But used here, it, in my opinion, I think it holds it all together and prevents it from becoming basically a comedy. You know, when my man is deciding to build his Lego gun in the very place where he's decided, without the score telling you this is tense, you should look out, you're going to start questioning, what is this guy doing? Why is he even doing this? This is pretty silly. But the score kind of prevents you from thinking that, in my opinion.
Hamza, what do you reckon?
I thought the score was pretty dramatic, and I think it personally works for the movie. It kind of had like, yeah.
Well, I like everything else. So I listened to it on I don't know if it was Amazon or whatever, but I listened to the score in isolation, done by the London Philharmonic Orchestra or whatever.
Yeah,
really, really good. I'm from a music background. I've been in the recording studio tons of times, and I just felt the volume, the levels at certain points were too high, too low. I thought the score itself was good, and I agree with Tunde and what you were about to say. I'm sure Hamza that. Yeah, it does help, but at certain points, it's either cut too suddenly.
What format did you watch it on? Could that be it?
Maybe.
Because I watched the file I watched it on. It was mixed well. Yes, the file. Yeah, that.
The file.
Yeah, maybe I watched it on the site. All right,
I was not trying to date himself out.
It's okay.
It's
in actual fact,
that I purchased.
I've done it in
reputable retailer.
What was that called? Limeware or something? What was that?
Do people still use that stuff? Really?
Limewire.
It was a very reputable source.
Good torrent.
BitTorrent. Yeah.
Well, I've got it on DVD. I downloaded it onto Amazon, so I watched it on my telly through the DVD. I watched it on Amazon, and then earlier today, when I was chilling out, I watched it on my phone as well. So I've done a few different formats. It's not messed up in a way. I think there were least two elements of it where I think if you go back over it, you'd agree that the start of the movie, I just think that first initial sound is really harsh, and then it drops into the sort of good soundtrack as it breeds into the film. And there's a bit where he's on crutches. It's not gathered the means to walk across walls, and the music just stops. Like you remember when we were talking about Alien, and I said about the hum of the ship was a good soundtrack, sort of bled through. Sometimes with a piece of music, you want to bleed it out. You want to drop it down and just let it bleed into the scene.
Could I play devil's? Not to say that was intentional, but could it have been? Case in point, obviously another director, slightly different. Nolan is known for mixing very badly. Some of them you can't even hear what the hell's going on. So I think that's actually intentional. Then again, I'm not saying they could have actually made a mistake here. I'm gonna have to actually watch the film again and listen out for this. But could that be a possibility? Not to say, they didn't drop a ball.
I found that with that movie,
it makes it seem even.
The walking sticks. I found it detracted, not enhanced.
But you know what I think?
For me, the soundtrack is not iconic. I don't remember it. Unlike Bram Stoker, which we reviewed last time, I can still hear it in my head. With this one, like
the werewolf in it.
Yeah, oh God.
Exactly.
How did we get back?
Don't see me. Don't see
Jack
me.
was just leading there the whole time.
I wasn't even going to mention the werewolf.
I could see it in your eyes, Bossman. I could see it in your eyes.
But like Tunde said, I think it did it in a way to make you realize that this isn't a comedy, because there was that other scene where Seth was on the ceiling. And in typical horror movies, when you've got the creature or the ghost or whatever on the ceiling, it's quite an eerie, it's supposed to be quite Whereas because Seth's character is so comical, even I feel like he became more comical as he did.
He did.
And the music helps to, say to the audience, no, this isn't a comedy. It's serious.
Sorry to cut you short. That's actually a good point with the whole comedy thing. Because as much as we're saying Jeff Goldblum was Jeff Goldblum, we have to give him some recognition for the nuances to his performance as the Fly as well. Because he was actually quite torn. It was almost like he was trying to accept his fate.
Yeah.
But like with a smile on his face. But when he found out about the pregnancy,
yeah,
granted his mind has been warped by this point, he almost was like, this could be a ticket to being human again. Or, that the fact that I have a kid now, that is some aspect of me that's still living on. So clearly he wasn't happy with being a Fly. So it was just, I like this kind of, there was some nuance, there was some detail to his performance that I thought was kind of cool.
I was going to say something on the sound actually, which is that I think maybe, Stephen, I think maybe the reason why you experienced that way is because of some of the shoddy editing that's actually in the film, if I'm being honest. Like, certain scenes just
very
in general
smooth.
just seem to be cut incredibly short. And I don't know how the whole thing was mixed, but maybe if they weren't able to accurately relay an audio track on top of the re-edited version, it could just be that sound. Because I know what you mean. Certain scenes,
but to be fair,
but then at the same time, certain scenes also seem to be really poorly stuck together at certain points, particularly towards the end.
Cronenberg does have a very weird editing style. I don't know if you've seen, is it Videodrome? With what's his flipping name?
I've seen it. It's
yeah.
I can only remember him when I think about Family Guy.
James, kind of very understated.
Oh, he's candy.
James Woods.
James Woods High is the
he edits the film in a very strange way, but that's why I'm saying I don't know if it's intentional, because he gives it this kind of weird dream-like nightmarish. But I don't know. I don't know if it's just bad editing or it's just his style. You don't. And he's like, yeah, they're there.
No, I would say it's bad simply because what you don't want to lose is continuity. And I think in certain parts of the film, like for the sake of maybe pace and for the sake of brevity, it feels like we lose a little bit of continuity. And in particularly towards the end, I think it's just lazy. or poor. I should say poorly executed. Maybe stuff was lost. Maybe you got to bear in mind in the 80s, maybe this material couldn't have been shown in its entirety.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe audiences weren't ready for it.
But to be fair, doesn't that also give the film, and I think we can all agree, it gives it this kind of snappy, kind of pace. To be fair,
of course.
Like, you get the detail you need, and boom, you're out.
I don't have an issue with the pace, but it's ultimately execution, right? So if it's by design, then the sound would be mixed and edited to match that.
This is true.
Whereas to me, it comes across as being that's the impression I get. Maybe there were extended elements of the scene that couldn't be shown or just weren't good enough, but they only had one cut and they had to make some adjustments, and the sound ultimately suffered in the end. You got enough sound to know what was happening, but we just don't get enough of that continuity to really follow that soundtrack through the process of the scene. Possibly, right? That's me trying to be an apologist for.
I think I might do this with all I think we might do this with all sci-fi films, but another question and a new one that we didn't do it.
But yeah, it's
we kind of touched on it briefly, but the tech, the science. Do you feel teleportation could ever exist? And I'm going to just state my case on this. For the longest time, whether it was seeing The Fly or not, all those years ago, I've always felt that we will be able to do
one thing I would say
ever, and it's nothing to do with The Fly. It will never be organic material. I don't think we'll ever be able to teleport ourselves, but I see us teleporting materials like metals or plastics or whatever, because the basis, I mean, you might need like supercomputers, but if we're teleporting stuff to different planets or whatever, you'd have a whole planet to work with. You could build quite a large complex, and we're now dabbling into quantum physics and quantum science stuff. So quantum computers would probably do this kind of stuff. I don't think we'll ever be able to teleport humans, because teleportation by default, and it states it in the film, you destroy the object and then you reassemble the object. And there was
this very strong
bacterias, stuff going on in us all the time, constantly. You just couldn't disassemble us and hope to put us back in the same way with all our memories and everything intact in a different place. So anyone pick up this question? Go for it.
Funny enough, I think it could. It reminded me almost of 3D printers. When he said when he said that the other telepod essentially just reinterpreted the object that went in. So I just saw it honestly as a 3D printer. And yeah, you do make a point. I don't know about how theoretically accurate transmitting a person is. I don't know how far we are, in the scale of things in real science. But this is a concept I've always thought was quite interesting, especially in like he could just pounce at you. Is the person that enters the same person that leaves? If your atoms have been all realigned, reassessed, and all this kind of jazz, is that still you? And then you can argue, yes, as you grow up, because technically, don't you leave your job? That kind of disappeared when you grow older. Some are kicked out, some are replaced, and so on and so forth as you get older. So it has, there's lots of things about, is this really you? What actually makes you you?
We've already teleported. We've teleported light, which it's such a weird concept to me. But I'm guessing they had two points where light was going to come in and leave via another receptacle with nothing in between, and they've done that. So particles of light, they have taken from point A to point B with nothing in between. They've done it. That is 100%. We have achieved teleportation. Only problem with that is
time it was made in. But I feel like unfortunately,
no one cares.
It's not on a grand scale.
Yeah, it's shown, and in actual fact, when Seth talks about it in The Fly, it would change the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, in an instant, if you talk about any technology that completely alters the way we are, I couldn't think of anything bigger
I thought that was really grounded how they dealt with it. That was just my opinion. I thought it was. I see Tunde's disagreeing with me, but I just thought that there wasn't like this crazy fanfare. It was quite understated. He understood the implications of what his invention was, which I liked. And he was right. It would completely change things. So I thought that was cool.
I do wonder if Tunde is going to mention the fact that he didn't seem that well. But anyway, go ahead. Tunde, and then Shad. So Tunde, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was on that whole point about not being fussed. He's like, yeah, I've just cracked human teleportation. Let's go on a holiday to Florida. Woo!
So you're telling me
not tell anybody. Let's not tell anybody. Let's not. I mean, look. If you can't take this. Okay, the science is irrelevant, right? Because it's science fiction. Ultimately, it doesn't stack up. Teleportation.
I think we'll get to this when we.
That is theoretically possible, and I think
we'll get to this when we.
They have demonstrated that you can affect particles from an immeasurable distance away from each other, but we're asking that we're extracting.
Well, you were saying that.
What is the ethical consequence of being able to teleport something, of being able to move instantaneously? To be honest, I don't think The Fly really cracks that. I think Star Trek has done episodes where they've addressed that in a much more insightful way. Like Hans was saying, what version of you actually arrives on the other end? What happens to you as you go in, or where do you go, and all that other stuff in between. On the process, in my list of Jeffisms, Jeff Goldblum's acting and his performance, I should say, Jeff Goldblum's performance essentially keeps it's the sleight of hand. Jeff Goldblum's performance is this thing that the magician does while the assistant is running off behind the stage.
What? Are you a magician?
Exactly. Because this is some real mumbo all over the place.
People would be getting rolled out.
Literally talking nonsense. But I think the script writers for Star Trek, The Next Generation, when they would write the script, they will say, Geordie LaForge says, oh, Captain, there's a planet. And then Data says, and they'll put filler text, which is called Science Babble or Trek Babble or something like that, which they will then send off to a consultant who will then return it to them with a whole bunch of sciencey sounding stuff. And as long as it sounded sciencey enough, our brains just go, okay, right, it's fine, it's whatever.
Yeah, we'll accept that. It's fine. Flux capacitor, whatever.
Exactly. Flux capacitors, transistors, relay, reverse polarity, whatever, right? And Jeff Goldblum basically is doing that while doing a Jeff Goldblum performance. But ultimately, mate, how can you be a scientist? Like, you literally have your lab and your experimentation where you sleep and eat.
Yeah.
He's lucky that he's version of a fly and not a part of a pizza.
When I think about it, it does irritate me a little bit that he didn't consider. Definitely, because you would have something like this in a sterile environment.
Indeed.
Why? Yeah, what if the baboon shit pre-teleport?
Yeah.
Do you get baboon plus shit?
Baboon dung all over his apartment and he's jumping around and swapping his DNA with
that lab would be shut down in a second. This guy was sleeping with the baboon. And I remember it was funny because he was trying to say, yeah, I need to do some tests on the baboon. And I was laughing. I was like, man, you're not going to do any goddamn tests, man. Yeah, because I was under the impression, because I remember the jerk douchebag guy alluded to the fact that he was like some kind of whiz kid or something. He was like some genius.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, man, he clearly has friends in high places to get those baboons. So you're telling me you couldn't have had better equipment? Like, what the hell, man? This is crazy. Well,
I did wonder.
It's the grimy nature of the business.
Financing his project.
Well, this is another thing I have with this, which is
right.
I understand this is.
Yeah.
So I don't think. I think this is also.
Yes, you're right. He does. He does.
I think this is also a part of a fault with the characterization and narrative delivery of the film, right? Which is, for the sake of just putting him across as a weird, zany scientist, transportation. And I know this probably will sound a bit like nitpicking and things like that, but this is big.
Yeah,
considering how grounded everything else is, this is huge.
Yeah.
This isn't just the back of the shed. This is huge.
This would be the most groundbreaking
revolutionary thing ever.
I literally, if I just sit here and think about any tech we've already come up with, I cannot think of anything bigger.
Yeah,
it would change
plugging
the world
it into his wall socket.
massive.
Plugging it into his wall socket.
That's what I love. But that's almost what I love about it, though, because it's this kind of like a schmo, this kind of dirty schmo guy. He's brilliant, yes, but he's clearly not equipped for what he's doing or he's
the camera.
It's like a great. He's not exactly the greatest vessel for this thing. If you know what I'm trying to say. But that's what I like about it. I like the kind of grimy backdrop with this crazy, high tech, supernatural, story.
Yeah.
Personally, it's like Ghostbusters. The whole Ghostbusters.
Of course. Well, what I noticed is that there is a kind of thing. It's the crazy scientist at the end of the street. The guy who invented a radio, but who built a radio by hand or whatever else they might have done, right? But this is big, right? So this isn't like some kind of, it's transportation. Why? It starts to unravel, right? The minute you stray away from Jeffisms and his performance, for me, I think it can quickly unravel. So you just out of the transporter. Wait a minute, you're building this rep, and it's not you want a journalist here. That's how scientists get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Where are your sponsors? Where's your control? Where's your? There's a lot, right, which starts to kind of come into it. And I know this isn't the whole purpose of the film, and it will sound like nitpicking, but it's just Jeffisms keep us off of that. We get just enough science babble to understand, okay, some molecular something. But, okay, why wouldn't the floor transport into this introspective part, if you could program to exclude all the inorganic materials in the transporter itself that comes, why would he not program it to exclude any DNA that's not his own? How could you even do this if you haven't already sequenced all of the DNA in your body?
He does state, he states who's financing him. But what actually made me twitch ever so slightly was that he says that they will get it. Like, they give him money to do the experiment. They don't know what he's experimenting on. He actually states that. So he's being financed. They don't know what it is, but because he's such a genius, they're happy to just keep financing him. But he almost says that when, because they know they will get it when I'm finished. And the crazy thing about that is, if you have cracked teleportation, you are the richest human being on the planet
ever.
Bring it the plasma pool of life.
But look.
But hey,
Chad,
forget it. Let's just go to Florida.
Yeah. Your thoughts on not time travel.
Well, it technically is time travel if you could teleport.
With this teleportation,
the blood effects were great. The fingernails.
There was a time back in the day where someone said, "You know what? Soon you will be able to heat up food and it will be done in 30 seconds. Or you know what? Soon we'll have more than 5 channels. Or you know what? Soon man will land on the moon." Yeah.
Someone needs a more powerful microwave.
5 minutes? Nah, man. 1 minute.
Soon you'll be able to.
Too powerful now, if you ask me.
Soon you'll be able to see people on your phone. Yeah, video calling, stuff like that. And to an element, there is a bit of magic to it, a bit of science behind it and stuff like that. And I totally get that. But teleportation, really? I don't know. For me, we're a physical matter.
Oh, it's gonna happen, man. Trust me, it's gonna happen one day.
We're a physical. Well, I can. In layman's terms, I can touch myself. I'm a physical matter.
You can touch yourself, yeah.
Take that to a different channel. Take that
for me, in one room, and then walk into some sort of teleportation device and end up in Florida because we're going with that now. No,
I think we'll continue this. Any of the horror podcasts will go, we're off to Florida. Anyway,
I don't think teleportation is a real thing. I don't think we can do. I don't think it can't be. It can't be done. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Do you know the science that truly? You know what the science that truly blew my mind as I've been growing up is that everything vibrates. Wood, rock, ourselves, all particles. Theoretically, I could pass through a wall or a table because at the right frequencies, everything vibrating and moving, we could just pass through it. So this is why I kind of can embrace teleportation a little bit, because I kind of understand that our understanding of the very small things in this world, the things that pass through us every second of every day, our understanding as a species is limited to about 10 people on this planet. You know, and even they can't fully grasp all the concepts. So, you know, I love having these conversations. They're usually much later at night, and
I will say one thing though about teleportation. If you've seen Doom, hey man, I ain't going first. That's all I'm saying.
maybe that's one we'll cover at some point. Although I don't know.
So funny.
But
I would like to live in a warehouse.
Not to turn this into too much of a science debate or whatever, I'm not an expert on quantum mechanics. The quantum world is notoriously quirky, right, as they say.
What's it called? Particles being observed, acting differently.
They change.
I remember watching a BBC documentary, and then halfway through it was going through that. Like every time you observed it, it changed. I was like, right, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. So the quantum world is very different, but there's a massive leap between demonstrating a theory.
I see what you did there. Quantum leap, eh?
Quantum leap. There's a big difference between quantum entanglement of a single atom and shifting somebody several miles or whatever across a distance. So Stephen wasn't wrong when he said time travel, because teleportation in the way that it's depicted in science fiction is time travel, because we're moving from one place to another instantaneously.
Yeah.
Right? That's faster than the speed of light, faster than anything else, right? That is time travel. So on that side of it, as I said, but for the sake of the film, I think one thing, as Shadav was talking, it kind of just made me think of something, which is as society, what we determine to be on the cusp of possibility is always going to change. So maybe we were more naive back in the 70s and 80s to think that, we just jump into a little microwave looking thing and hop out the other side, bish bash bosh, it's done. Whereas now we are a little bit more informed about technology, and we're maybe more a bit like, well, come on. My phone can't do it. Snap.
Yeah. It's just, don't get me wrong.
If my phone can't teleport me, it's happening.
Just to step away from the science, the usual stuff we do is irritations and loves. Shads, you can lead us on this. Irritation in the movie. What irritated you?
Nothing really. I must admit.
Are you sure? I thought one of the irritations would be that there was no werewolf in it.
For me, I've actually found myself. I haven't watched a lot of Jeff Goldblum movies, and I've actually found myself. You know what? I actually like him as an actor.
Bro, watch Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Was it the 70s one? The one with he's Jeff Goldblum.
He's the one that's playing Jeff Goldblum.
It's the one with Kiefer Sutherland's father.
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland. It was made in, I think it was the 70s. I think so. He's in that one, and he's actually pretty much the character he plays in The Fly. To be honest,
but the character he plays in The Fly in every movie. He does.
So for me, there weren't really that much irritations, you know. But if I was to be nitpicky, I would say I have a few. Okay, first of all is
From you don't have any. To
I don't have any, so now I have a few. Let me take it a deep breath. Let me go on.
Oh, I didn't have any, but I do now. Okay, fine. So, the first one. Where's the police in all of this? Not once do we see them, right?
You can say that about every horror movie, man.
Where's the police in Alien?
Okay. E.T., man. E.T. I told you guys before. E.T. I told you before that thing. I would not trust it. Yeah. So E.T. And at the end, when she, for some reason, could not. Okay, I know. It's a gun in your hand. You've got to shoot this. Shoot this creature. There might be a little bit of hesitation, but she made it out like she wanted to let him live. That was a fate worse than death. His body had merged with the teleportation device. So he had a little R2D2 running behind him as well as the fly.
Fly
this
is
fate for a man, or any person for that matter, woman, man, whatever, child, whatever. So for me, hey man, you need to end that fly's life. Seth Brundle.
I'll jump in here before going to the other guys. Who doesn't notice they're being followed by the ex-boyfriend when his number plate says particle? I mean, seriously, you would know he was behind you pretty much every time he tries to stalk you. The fact that she ever even... Look, I'm not a woman, obviously. But I would have quit that. I would have told him to jog on ages ago. When she finds him in a house, I mean, this guy is... I'm actually got a new thing as well. I do think we should embrace this. I think we've just done 3 horror movies. He is the leading douche. Like we've got from Alien, we've got
Ash.
Yeah, Ash. I guess Dracula or whatever. But
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing was a proper douche there, dude.
Yeah. But this guy is... he's a stalker. He's a psychopath.
Do you think he ever
is scary? He's scarier almost than the Fly in some of this. I do love when
he thought he had a chance.
Yes, because she wasn't firm enough, man.
Once he knew.
I'm not victim blaming her, but she was not harsh enough. She was like, give me the keys. And he was like, maybe I'll keep them. That was when I would pick up the phone and say,
day
police,
one, when my man turned up in her apartment and was showering, using her shampoo, using her everything. That is deal broken instantly. Instant deal breaker. Instant.
I actually thought of all of us, and I thought, look, I've known Chad for quite a while. I've known you guys for a little while, but I thought of all of us and what I know about you. And what I thought was, there is not one of us here that would not tell a girl to jog on. Why the hell do you think you could just go into my house and have a shower? Get the... Ow! I would be gifting them an extortioner with him as a...
Sorry.
Made me switch.
So it's going to be that random thing where, like, so you turn in, the girl's in your shower, and you're thinking, like, did you use my shower squeegee, or did you...
Imagine you brought someone back, and she's in the shower.
The biggest scene that actually made me twitch out of all of them was the fact who turns up to kill a monster and assembles the gun when they get there. Yeah. You have the gun ready before you go in. And you don't tell the monster, could you wait a minute while I put this... while I put this... It just... It was mind-boggling.
Yeah, I know.
And the thing is, that acid vomit, man.
He had already seen Brundlefly, so he knew. He had seen him smash through the flipping glass. He knew this guy wasn't. He knew this guy wasn't fucking around. So,
and you know what? I don't know. I've seen that glass. I've seen that glass in real life. That glass is thick.
Yeah.
That square glass, man. That glass is thick.
One of my one of my likes though. I quote a few horror films over the or whatever. They went to her flat or one of my most quoted is and one of my favourite lines is from Hellraiser, which is compared to the decades of your pain, this will seem like a memory of heaven. I love that line. But I've said throughout my entire teens and my 20s and that, be afraid, be very afraid. that is one line from this film. Very iconic line, incredibly iconic line. Tunde, irritations.
Okay, so I mean, like you touched on, everyone's touched on a few of mine already. I'll pick two. Tawny brings Tawny into the thing, and he's like, "Yeah, go into the transporter." She's like, "No." How about an alcohol rub? What?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing? He's rubbing
like,
alcohol on his back.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize that was a thing.
And now it's
I mean, that's not really.
So it would have burnt him. That saw the hair.
Yeah.
You know that bit with the hairs.
I think that's why he said it hurts, and then he pushed her off.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I would not like alcohol rubbed on me personally. I didn't know. Maybe that's how they got down in weird houses in the 80s.
Don't knock it till you try it, but it's a waste of vodka if you ask me. So.
And then
and the thing, John Carpenter's the thing.
Major stalker. He basically has no purpose except to be an obstacle for Veronica, except when at the end he now needs to be the voice of reason suddenly. And the hero. In addition to him building the gun in the apartment, is it just me or did his face look like someone in the process of orgasm as his limbs are being melted off? Sorry, he didn't really nail that performance for me. It didn't seem like
there's only one way to find out, isn't it?
I think I found him out of. So you've got the three main characters. I found him the most woody.
Yeah. His performance
maybe that's doucheness. Because if we were to be around a douche, you know, he's instant douche. There's no grey areas. He's not like even pretending not to be a douche. He's 100% pure douche.
He was a douche. Did he have his hair slicked back? I can't remember.
Kinda.
You might as well have.
We'll just have to see. Maybe someone have to put like a brain sensor, see what parts of the brain is activated when your limbs are being melted off by acid. He seemed to be enjoying it. Anyway, and probably out of all, okay, the fact that Jeff finds out he has merged with a fly and then does nothing. I didn't like that. And I think
what can you do?
Actually, at his slowest. What it does though, because he asked the computer, "How can I stay more human?" And the computer essentially says you need to add more human elements to the process.
And then it's like 4 weeks later.
Yeah, but
so,
I kind of forgave that. I mean, I agree it's slightly irritating, but I kind of forgave that because. If we're to believe the story, then there's going to be a fly element of him taking over.
Yeah.
So you've got the sensible human and the primitive, insanely primitive flies and insects have been around.
Of course.
Right, so they're about as primitive as you can get.
But from that point, he still displays a lot of humanity, right? Pretty much all the way until his jaw drops off and he becomes the E.T. bug monster thing. For me, I think when he finds out that he's merged with a fly, I don't really know where this character is going now. Because before you go with him, like something he doesn't know has happened to him, and he's experiencing some type of growth.
Good, but they can't quite
with a fly. But he doesn't have any motive to continue in his current state, and we don't have any real interest in him. You know, like. We don't understand why he's even doing these experiments. It's not like if he stopped, he would suddenly be in a worse off position. He came from a relatively decent position. He was a well-known scientist, by all accounts. I just think him finding out he's a fly and then pushing on by basically just doing nothing.
But you have to remember really well with me. The scene that precedes that. Okay, first of all, remember when he's like, he starts to peel his nails off, right?
that's the only time I think.
The way I read it was he was kind of paralyzed by essentially fuck, like I fucked up, and he kind of just didn't know what to do. And then remember when he was on crutches, she came back. He had actually changed. He was a little bit more acrobatic.
He was on the ceiling.
Yes,
yeah, he was more nimble.
But I would like to put this.
I
to
saw
you.
that as the fly almost.
I would like to put this. I would like to put this to you, to all the gentlemen on this call. You pass through an experimental teleportation device. Bear in mind, you are being funded by people who are interested in this device and how it turns out, but we don't really have a true identity. Anyway, you go through this teleportation.
Funded by Tesla.
Funded by Elon Musk. And after you come out, in fact, actually, let's wind it back. Let's make it a very everyday situation. You take a plane, and you fly from point A to point B. And coming off that plane, you start to develop here in places that you don't often have here and fly-like activities. Are you just going to go...
Fly-like activities,
yeah? Yeah.
Sticking to walls. Avoiding spiders.
Yeah. Are you just going to chill and go, must be that fly that was in the AC?
Wait,
or are you
just
going
do
to
a
go
Jeff
to
Goldblumism?
Jeff Goldblum?
I think he's very pragmatic. I think
he doesn't seek to undo it. He doesn't seek to undo it. He doesn't seek any help. He just jams for 4 weeks.
But I could also say, think about that for a second. If you've done something that you can't reverse.
How do you think?
He can't change it.
But this is
you'd be like.
But this is a fault in the characterization. We don't know that it can't be reversed because we never see the character actually try to reverse it.
True.
He embraces being a fly for some strange reason.
I
think
your finger gets cut off.
That scene where he's on the ceiling, he is almost like, oh, maybe this is the fate I was meant to have, because it's almost like I don't think the story was told to that effect as well as it could have, because that scene kind of suggested that he enjoyed being the fly and having all these.
Granted, making the best of a bad situation. But look, your finger gets cut off. It's lying on the table. Hey man, if you call the ambulance right now, they can save your finger. And you instead go, ooh.
No, I think he's in love with. He has two loves. He has the love for Veronica, and he has a love for science. And if you ask me, in this, his love for science is stronger. And when he's changing, he is equal parts scared and equal parts fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree.
Us four would be scared. We'd be terrified. The fascinated would be off. I actually kind of irritate me half and half.
I agree with you. However, that's not told in the story. That's not shown.
I think it is
through the filmmaking process.
I don't think it is. Okay, you know when he rips his nail off? You best believe if my nail just went a slight millimeter, and I realized it could come off, that I'm not pulling it off. That's staying on. This guy was pulling it off, squaring it.
Okay.
He was morbid. It was like a morbid fascination.
That's your interpretation. What I'm saying is the film doesn't do a good job of showing that in any way. Yeah. So his desire to stay as a fly doesn't make any sense. It's not like he's documenting for the sake of the camera, for us as the audience. We see a couple of images where he's recording things on video, but only when Veronica is there. So I guess he's not been recording what's been happening in between. As I said, I think his motives for even inventing transportation are not told to us. So why would you then want to stay as a fly?
Explained in The Fly too.
Never watched that movie, man.
I've got it. Actually, it isn't that bad, but I haven't watched it.
As the werewolf said, man, don't see me. That's
but Hamza.
Yeah.
Your irritation.
My irritations, I didn't find it before. Granted, it was restrictions of the time it was made in. The animatronic fly, I think, unfortunately, kind of goes against what we had seen before when he was transforming, the agility, the strength. Because there was that scene where I think at the end when he's full fly, where he like pushes her into the pod And I was like, nah, no way. I don't buy that thing. Could do it. That as well as I forgot her name, the girl he picked up in the bar. She was almost too ditzy, and it was like, I get it was again, maybe it was just the time. Because come on, this guy just broke someone's arm.
That is gross, by the
someone's
way.
arm. He's got hives everywhere. He's jittery. I mean, it's like, there's one. Yeah, there's.
I don't know what he's munching that protein bar on the
there's one part when she's like, "Oh, I can't go up the stairs." Then he picks her up and runs up, and I'll be freaking out, bro. I'll be finding ways to get out of that place.
Well, to be fair, Hamza, if any of us were picking you up and going up the stairs, I definitely think you would be very, very scared.
And impressed. But I think it was at the end where Veronica, when Mr. Grundle smashed through the glass and picked up Veronica, and she just let it happen. And I was like,
no resistance.
Yeah.
Her resistance was so lame.
I get what she was going for. I don't think she pulled it off. It was the whole thing with she's conflicted.
Part of her was interested what was gonna pop out.
Yeah.
I think sliding.
I don't know. It was
proboscis. Yeah, whatever.
It was just weird. Like there was some dissonance there when I watched it. I was like, you don't want to be with this guy. Obviously because he's now turned into a flipping monster.
It goes way up.
Gonna let him take you? Like, what the hell? Like, not even trying to gouge his eyes out or anything. There was nothing.
Yeah, again, I would point to the poor character development. Ultimately, from being really critical, we don't believe that because we've got no reason. We know they're in a relationship, but we don't really, in my opinion, we don't really feel it. He spends as much time with Tawny as he does with Veronica.
I'm pretty sure.
No.
It was him who said to her, and he didn't even officially break up with her, but he just said to her, "If you come back here again, I may hurt you."
Yeah. About the fly.
Just to move on, it is a remake.
Yeah.
Should it ever be remade? I actually would say no. I think it would. I touched on this earlier. CGI and the movement thing, the things we're arguing against, kind of, they should have moved faster. I think by the time the fly emerges, it would be really ridiculous. It would get nuts. It would get action film-esque, and I think that would detract a little bit. Sunday.
So listen. The film is a remake. So we can't really be here and go, I can never be remade. Go for it. If somebody thinks they can tackle it, I think the E.T. weird monster at the end is a weakness of the film and shouldn't be factored into any potential remake. I think the scariest parts of the film were essentially when Jeff was so enthusiastic and his enthusiasm wasn't reciprocated. And that's something that you could sometimes see in certain relationships where you've got maybe a partner or somebody who's very keen on something and they're going along with it just to placate them. But when they fail to go along with it, their demeanor suddenly changes. They become aggressive. Jeff was scary in those types of situations.
Yeah. He was more of a monster there.
He was more of a monster then, than he was when he was actually a fly thing. So maybe in a remake, I don't think some of the scenes would level of introspection more, as in the change is more internal rather than external.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting angle to play it. I get the feeling they'll slip into weird CGI monsters and sky beams and blah.
What?
Stephen, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I will disappoint Sunday one more time. I need to go to the loo. So carry on talking. I will be right back.
It's like you kept going like this.
He's holding it in. Yes, he's holding it in, dance.
Now he's alone. Now we're alone, guys.
You know this is going to go at some point.
What? I was thinking about that werewolf, innit?
Okay.
Don't see me in that, man.
Don't see me.
Five knuckle shuffle.
Actually doing STFU and things. Some sort of FU.
I would pay pay-per-view to watch Gary Oldman in that costume and John Cena in the wrestling match. I'm not even joking.
All the way from Transylvania. The werewolf. John.
Vlad,
The performances really weren't carrying.
I must suck your blood.
John.
That scene really weren't selling.
Gimmick.
He's got the silver belt out.
Oh, God. John's got the holy water.
Last week, when you drove a stake through my heart, Score does a good job of telling and burn me alive. You thought that was the end of me, but I challenge you to hell in a cell.
Literal hell.
Exactly. And actually, those
Undertaker's
Those sexy
does.
the referees.
Exactly.
It's still commentated by Jim Ross and the King.
These satanic women are ascending.
And what's this? The Undertaker has now entered the Hell in the Cell.
Why, werewolf? Why? Why?
I think I'm just going to film this from the toilet.
Oh, Jesus. Well, we left you something, Stephen. I hope you appreciate it.
I love it. When we did the last one, and I heard the recording back, and it was referred. Obviously, it's also all a surprise to me after that. It was very funny. So we're talking about should it be remade?
Jack holds it all together and prevents it.
I think I agree with Sinead. That it's a remake already, so we can't really be too kind of should it be remade or whatever. It can. I would like to see a remake. Having said that, you can actually watch The Fly as a modern film without it being The Fly. What I mean by that is a very similar film is the new Joker movie, where you see the character where he's going about his own thing. He's trying to make himself better. He's trying to better himself, but something's always holding him back. Like in The Fly, it's the society, it's whatever. He wants to get with a woman, it doesn't work out, and in the end, ultimately, he turns into the Joker. And if you haven't seen it, it's a brilliant film. I'd definitely recommend it.
I love it.
And that to me is a Fly remake without the monster, the grotesque part, in a way where it's all internal. You see you becoming the monster because, as they say, if you don't die a hero, you live long enough and you turn into a monster, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And
it's actually villain.
That's what Batman says.
No, it's
Harvey Dent.
Harvey Dent says
Yeah, Harvey
he says
Dent
villain
says
as well, not monster.
Hamza, what do you reckon?
Will live long
you
enough.
are the die hero, or you live long enough to become a villain. Yes, it's true. And I think watching a remake would be great. Let's not put in all the CGI, rubbish. Like Stephen, I'm not a fan of CGI. I don't know why they don't do modern puppetry kind of monsters. Is it because it's just too expensive, or it's just too time consuming, or
skill set?
But
skill sets.
Yeah, that's another thing as well.
Yeah. Because CGI just kind of makes everything just so fake. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what CGI reminds me of now? It reminds me of what people must have thought about stop motion. So when you had Jason and the Argonauts and stuff like that, stop motion must have been mind blowing.
Yeah,
like seeing those skeletons and stuff.
I still think it is.
Yeah.
I still think it is.
I love it, but when we watch it, we kind of it's not. It's ropey. I still love it, but it is ropey as hell. CGI ages the same way. If you,
it's
yes and no.
Yeah, because I think it's the overuse of it's the usage of it. You'll be surprised at how much.
I think enhancing is good.
You'll be surprised at how much CGI is used. Whoops.
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. You'll be surprised at how much CGI is used that you don't notice in a film. Because the majority of it is
color correcting,
bits and
filling in background. Yeah, exactly.
All these types of things.
CGI, I'm a Star Wars fan. CGI on ships or anything slow moving or large is beautiful and ages quite well. I think CGI doesn't age well when it's fast movement. When the things I'm
the weight
really,
for sure. That's always been a gripe with me. The weight of a character with CGI. But I think they're getting better at it.
They are, but there is something they're not getting better, and it reminds me of what's called the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
Which is so. I'm just going to say this. Spoiler alert! Have you guys seen The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Has everyone seen The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone? Do you mind? For people viewing this now, if you don't want a spoiler at the end of The Mandalorian, where we're at now, eject.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, so in fact, you know what? I'm not gonna spoil it at all. A certain character appears, and it does.
And he looks like crap.
I love the Mandalorian, but it doesn't matter how many times I look at his face. I do not like it. It is rubbish.
Do you know how disrespected you must feel as an actor when you come in to act, and then you watch the finished product, and they put some CGI abomination.
Yeah, but he knew what that was going to happen. Obviously,
I'm sure. But not only is that uncanny valley and the poor execution of essentially deepfake technology or whatever someone want to call it, I just think it's completely unnecessary. Like, as people, are we not mature enough to understand that this is not real life? That Luke Skywalker, is a fictional person.
I was trying to keep that secret.
He's a fictional person. He doesn't have to look like Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
Indiana Jones doesn't have to look like Harrison Ford.
I think they should have used another actor because I just it's jarring, and it's like Princess Leia in the most recent Star Wars film. You know, stop it. I actually want them to stop it because it detracts.
I think they do that because it's so that us as the audience don't waste. It's almost like us as the audience don't waste too much time thinking about the character, how different it is. We're used to a certain looking character, and that's how we like it. It's humans, it's like we don't like change, do we?
I think this is a whole different subject, but I think it's one that you turn into a character into a brand.
Yeah, exactly that.
You've now changed.
In fact, it's the same thing with the. There was something I was going to mention in the for the film. It was all to do with Seth's grey suit. You know that scene where she goes, "Oh, do you ever change your clothes?"
Yeah,
and he was like, "Yeah, I just have the same suits." I was copying Einstein because Einstein's theory was that if he wore the same grey clothes or whatever, is because he didn't want to waste brain cells on choosing what clothes to wear for the day.
I'm kind of inclined to do it myself.
And in fact, people today do it. Like Barack Obama, he wears the same suit. He either wears a black suit or a blue suit. It's because he said he's got when he was president, obviously, he had too many other things to think about, to decide. And choosing what clothes to wear simply was the priority list.
Mark Zuckerberg's another one.
Yeah.
And he's a robot. So
it's like Donald Trump's red tie. That was Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's the branding, man. It's the branding. But going back to the whole thing with CG. This is the thing. I think CG works with creatures, not so much with humans. The thing is, with human fate, same thing with Tarkin when they did the CG for Tarkin in Rogue One.
Yeah, that was.
It didn't look quite right because look, the truth of the matter is, humans, we are designed to read the face. That's where we get all our information. So you can tell when something is off pretty flipping quick. Babies can do it, for heaven's sake. You just know when something is off.
Well,
yeah. Okay,
so
but
creatures.
Visually, we're not. So if you sort of put a line down our center, my ear might be slightly off to compare to my other ear. We're not symmetrical. We think we are, but we are not. And when CG, what they do is they make it symmetrical, and that's the problem. You have to offset a few.
So for example,
that's what animators do, or the modelers. They'll kind of make things look isometrical to make it look more, realistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, so for me, there's a number of things with this CGI thing. Okay. One, I think people just need to be mature. Actors change. It's the role that they're playing.
Yeah. It should be recast, man.
Just recast.
Different formats. I don't. It's not
right.
Yeah.
This kind of, not every character has to be a brand, So just recast it. No questions asked.
Even Mark Hamill said, I forgot his second name, Sebastian, the guy that plays Winter Soldier.
Are you talking about on Twitter? And he was saying that he has no say in the casting, but
this is true. But they actually look quite similar. I forgot his second name. The guy that plays Winter Soldier. Yeah, the guy that plays Winter Soldier.
Over it, you'd agree that
he looks like a similar young Mark Hamill. So they could have just. He actually works with Disney. Could have just done that scene.
They should be picking the actors based on their ability, not because of their looks.
No, this is true. But he's a good actor, and he looks like it.
Is he a good actor though?
But you know what?
But today we do this in the modern world. We do this in jobs. Some people are selected because of the way they look. That's just how life is.
Well, I've always been given jobs for how devastatingly handsome I am. So.
But it doesn't make it right. But it doesn't make it right?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. But that's how our society is geared.
Okay. So this is the thing. This is particularly, so just to wrap on, and then I'm going to say something else, because particularly with Star Wars, what I find so baffling is how people are prepared to accept a 7-foot-long giant slug, or lightsabers, or flying through the Death Star, and all these kind of crazy things. But if you change Luke's face, or if Luke doesn't have green eyes, that's ridiculous. There's so many silly things that we accept, yet these relatively trivial things about the character.
Iconography is very important. The same thing with when people lose their minds when you change a superhero suit in a movie.
Look, this is why I think we need separate episodes where we discuss these things, because I think we can discuss these things for a very, very long time. We're talking about the fly. We're talking about the fly now.
Go back on this whole thing, because you guys were saying that the CG doesn't work with humans. Bizarrely, I think it doesn't matter whether it's a human or an animal. It's more about the purpose of it. And CGI could work in a retelling of The Fly, as long as it's not about the CGI.
Yeah, you want to drop it down, and
if whatever happens, the final thing needs to be the thing we go on a journey with, right? So if the main character, whoever they pick to act the role, is that person that we're watching, then we just don't transform them. And it just reminds me of Blade. So Blade had an alternative ending where Deacon Frost turns into a big, swirling blood tornado with a floating head in the thing. And they changed it to just Blade and Deacon Frost fighting as in their humans, whatever. One, it was much better. And two, they said, we didn't want to lose the audience's connection to Deacon, the character. And even in this version of The Fly, that's exactly what happens. For the sake of shock and horror, we lose connection with The Fly. I don't care about this weird ET monster thing. We cared about Jeff, but we don't. Well, really, but we don't care about this fly monster thing. And if they turn it into a CGI something, meh.
Yeah, we're not gonna care. You can shoot that back into the teleportation device.
That would be my problem with a remake. That there would, because there was sympathy. Up to the end, there was sympathy, and I think they'd be inclined to detract from that sympathy, and that would detract from the points of the original. And I personally, I don't think it should be.
Then again, I'm not saying they could have actually made a mistake.
You can twist the ending because
I'm not saying they could have actually made a mistake.
We know what the ending is already, and what some movies do is they completely twist the ending. So that
you know what I've started to realize. Ever since we started this podcast, I've started to watch countless horror movies, and I've watched a lot of remakes. And what I've realized is I know now they're going to twist it. Yeah. I know how they're going to twist it. And in actual fact, it makes it crazy predictable.
The subverting trend, it's okay. Kind of is played out. Yes. They did it with what's that stupid film? The cemetery film, Pet Sematary.
Yes.
The remake, they subverted
because you knew it was going to be the daughter that got hit. That. And not the son.
Yeah,
yes, 100%. I watched that about a week ago.
Yeah, because I watched the original just before I watched the remake again, just as a refresher. They did lots of things. It was weird because the remake was almost made for people that had watched the original, if that makes any sense. Yes. Because it had, which I found weird.
Imitating.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, people won't appreciate this scene because they might not have seen the first one. Because they had certain tensions built in one place. Because you knew what was going to happen in the original, if that made any sense. I think someone stepped on a nail in the original at one point around the bedroom. So in the remake, they had the camera real shot, like real tight, like off. And I'm like,
but you know what I think?
It doesn't. But I appreciate.
But you know what I think?
No one else next to me that hasn't, they'll be like, oh, okay.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah. So it was a pointless remake.
I found, pointless remake. I found it irritating. And in actual fact, the shock ending wasn't that shocking. In actual fact, I was by the time,
but the thing is,
horror is a roller coaster ride, and by the time I got off that ride, I was meh about the whole experience.
But this is what I mean. Like you said, Hamza, the remake's not made for us. It's made for the younger generation.
No, but then what's the point? Then what's the point of making it?
Because the point is, it's something.
No, this is the thing.
It's something that's related.
Hamza mentioned that it was pointed, and it pointed out a lot mirrors to the original. If you're aiming this at younger generation, why are you pointing to the original movie?
Because they
don't. Then you might as well just make something new. That's the point I'm trying to make.
A skeleton to follow.
Case in point. The original.
Well, I haven't seen Pet Sematary, so I don't know. Pet Sematary, the remake could be a terrible film, but The Fly can be remade because, in all honesty, I don't see The Fly telling the same story as The Blob, telling the same story as The 50-Foot Woman, it's telling the same story as Frankenstein and all these kind of things. Even Back to the Future is technically the same story. What happens when we transgress the limit of our scientific endeavor? There's nothing fancy about The Fly. There's nothing really fancy about what the story is trying to tell.
100%. I mean, the 50s one is a very different film to the 80s one. And not only that, this is the thing. Just like how the 50s one is very different to the 80s, if there was a 2000s one, it would have... You can't even make the same film. Case in point, douchebag character. You think that guy can survive in a movie in this day and age? Hell no. He'll be right out. The scriptwriter will be like, "Nah, we can't have the guy that's a harasser be the hero. Are you crazy? What the hell?"
And who's too late.
Straight out. Yeah.
I'll be sending the wrong message.
Yeah. So he would have to change.
That is another conversation where we talk about things like Freddy Krueger, where a paedophile gets superpowers. But there are certain things in the 70s and 80s which absolutely blow my fragile little mind.
So if there was a remake, he would probably be a more sympathetic character. He'll probably be, there was a breakup and he would like to get back with her. In fact, they even might make him more of a jerk for not wanting him.
Maybe they'll actually give the character an actual motive for inventing teleportation.
Oh, yeah, but this is my point. Everything would be tweaked. The line where he said, at the beginning, well, now I have to kill you, because you've seen too much and stuff. That's out, because that could be problematic. There's just lots of things that would change. So the feel of the film now is changed. You know what I'm trying to say? So it would that now it's a completely different movie. You know what I'm trying to say? But as for say they wanted to maintain the movie as it is and bring it to the 21st century, they might have to do a George Lucas, where in the sense that that scene where he's an animatronic, hey man, throw some CGI on that. And then I think, then yeah. But as for full remake, yeah, it could be remake, but it'll be just a very different film.
Oh, one of my notes, and I need to get this out before I forget. Did you spot Cronenberg in the movie?
Oh, he did. He had a cameo.
Oh, where was that?
Quite a large one, actually.
He wasn't the wait. He wasn't
the gynecologist.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh shit. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. At the end with the abortion, right?
Yeah, which goes into the to the clinic.
I didn't know that. Fair play. Yeah, he did.
What I've realised from these last 3 that we've done is I often miss a lot of my notes. We don't, because we really do sort of touch on so many subjects that I don't manage to get them out, but I had to get that one out. So, get to the horror. Trashy. What are we? Oh, well, hasta la vista, get to the horror. What are we doing?
Who's going to go first?
Who's going first this time? Not me.
You know what? I started it, so I'm going to say get to the horror. I measure films on enjoyment. If I'm entertained, I gave an analogy a few minutes ago about a roller coaster, and in actual fact, horrors tend to be, as films go, maybe horrors and action films, they're the most close to roller coasters you can get, highs and lows sort of thing. And I went through the full gambit in this film, and watching it a few times didn't detract from my enjoyment, which means I was entertained, which surely is the main purpose of a movie. Not massively horrified, but certain scenes horrified me, like the whole face sloughing off him and stuff. I mean, there was some grim scenes. So yeah, we'll get to the horror. Get to the horror for me, definitely. Next, anyone take it up? Go.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. It's get to the horror for me too. The reason why it's a film, again, I have to give it more credit for what it's. I hadn't seen it for years, but it has got some layers to it. It's got the drama, the interpersonal drama of a relationship. Granted, some people in this panel believe that the relationship wasn't done well. Personally, I think it was. I'll be honest. I see why someone would fall in love with Seth. I'll be honest with you. He's a brilliant guy. He's charming.
Very charming.
As she said before.
I fell in love with Seth.
Yeah, exactly. Before she gave him that ass. You're kind of cute, if I recall what she said. And I agree.
Certain scenes
wasn't very smooth.
When his part fly, when she touches his chest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, whoa.
Yeah. Shit. I mean, who doesn't love a guy that just wakes up one morning and starts doing flips on the bar, man? Come on. But yeah, so the limited sets, I don't know, the kind of claustrophobic feeling of it. I think it does succeed as a horror movie, as a thriller. The stuff with, I think Tanel also said this before, just seeing bits, like when he opens up his cabinet and you literally see bits, and you're trying to, before he shuts it, you're trying to figure out, what's that? And I could have sworn there's something that looked like a penis, or maybe that's just me.
Balls. But I thought it was balls.
Yeah, it's just that icky kind of griminess to it. Jeff Goldblum's performance, yes, as much as we were saying he's Jeff Goldblum, there's some stuff in there. The twitching, the conflicted, maybe I do enjoy being a fly, or am I just saying this because it's the only way to accept my fate? These little things he kind of puts in. Little things about the makeup, like the fact that one of his irises is bigger than the other. I don't know if you guys noticed that, like when switching. Just tiny details like that, which I thought was amazing. One gripe though, when he's walking on the ceiling and he puts his shirt up, technically it shouldn't fall back down because he's upside down, but whatever.
Poorly stuck together at some
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's crazy. I'm going to see that scene again.
points.
Cronenberg,
towards the end.
Yeah, I've loved it since I was a kid, and it was kind of great seeing it through the eyes of an adult again. Yeah, I think it was great. So get to the horror.
Okay. So for me, it's, it would be a get to the horror for me as well. Like I said, I've not seen the 50s Fly.
What's his flipping name?
I've seen it.
6-5. When it was first suggested,
It's
really, and because I didn't know anything about it. For me, before I watched it, in my mind,
it's
I didn't know what to expect, to be honest, because I was thinking a fly's not really, compared to something like if it was a spider, which is a bit more scarier for some people. Do you know what I mean? Like a fly's a fly. How is that gonna? It doesn't have fangs. It doesn't have claws. How am I gonna get scared? What are they doing here? And I was pleasantly surprised. Also, I like the fact that how you had the romantic element to the film. You had the element of where he was trying to prove himself, which is very relatable. You had the element of where the betrayal, and then even with the comedy as well. And like I said, I've found myself a newfound love for Jeff Goldblum's films and things. You know what I mean? And for me,
it's the
Yeah.
it was a watch. It was easy watching. I've watched it twice, and I just enjoyed it. Yes, there are elements where you kind of went, hang about, what's going on here? But just I think Jeff's acting holds the movie together. I think if it was another actor, it wouldn't do so well. Yeah. So for me, it's a get to the horror. It's an entertaining watch.
Sunday.
Yeah, definitely agree. Jeff Goldblum holds this thing down. I can't imagine this iteration of this film with anybody else. And I know people will probably say it with a lot of things, but I think Jeff's performance literally does carry this film.
I don't mean to go short, but I'm a firm believer that there are certain roles in history where they're nailed so well by that particular actor that it couldn't. You can't see it.
Indiana
any
Jones,
better.
Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Else.
The role was supposed to actually go to Michael Keaton, but he turned it down.
Oh, get out!
Oh, wow, that's a good bit of trivia. I
Yeah.
like that.
Why?
The Fly, yeah, Seth. The role of Seth was gonna go to Michael.
Interestingly, I can imagine Michael
I
Keaton.
can. I was about to say that. I can.
But
Yeah.
imagine him, but it would be completely different.
Yeah.
The tone of the film would be completely different. It would be a lot. It would have. That feels like it would have been a lot more serious, a lot more
Serious, a lot more scarier, yeah.
But then again, he did do Beetlejuice, man. He rocked it in that, and it was quite comedic. So you never know.
Anyway, Sunday. Sorry, I didn't mean to go.
Yeah. So the film has some flaws, right? And contrary to what everybody else is saying, I think the film doesn't have a strong emotive drive. I don't think the characters have strong motivations. I don't think they even have strong connections in the film. Characters just appear. So Stathis, the douchebag guy, just appears wherever the director needs him to be a foil to whoever he needs him to be a foil to. There's no real reason for any of this other than to show us grotesque imagery. That being said, it is fun to watch. Yes, the science doesn't necessarily hold up, but that's not what you're watching this for. You're watching this not because of the science, you're watching this for the cautionary tale of science overall. The specifics doesn't actually matter. It's entertaining. Jeff Goldblum performance, yeah, 100%. So I will basically give it a get to the horror, but it's kind of like the horror.
It's getting to the horror.
It is.
Get to the horror.
Getting to the horror.
It's on there.
Getting to the horror.
But it's there purely because I think good enough. But they only have it's strong conceptually. There are just issues maybe with the execution, but I think it will still add value to you. If you watch it, you will still derive something from it, particularly around the body horror and how that's portrayed and how that's done. I don't think you're going to watch this film to get anything in terms of watching character development or anything like that, but you will leave maybe feeling ill at ease about how progress can go unchecked in technology and science. and maybe think about the people that you meet on nights out, and be careful when you end up in somebody's warehouse, stroke lab, stroke gym, stroke.
I'm fairly sure it's not happened to any of us, but you never know. There's always time.
Should have looking kind of good these days.
It'll end up on someone's lab bench thing.
Trying to turn me into a fly in that.
Hey, man.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure. So I think the fly gets all over. The next episode I'm gonna give something off the wall, because if we keep getting to the horror on all stuff, eventually people are gonna go, these guys don't review anything. They love everything. So I think it's up to me. It's up to me to give something off the wall. So subscribe, like, follow us, and I swear something. The next one is going to be slightly off center.
Are you going to tell us what it is? We normally.
Well, not right now, because we never. I've decided we never tell them what the next episode is.
Oh, okay.
But we'll stop the recording.
Yeah, to be fair, we've been doing it. We usually do it off. To be fair, so hoping to know.
Eventually, we're going to be giving you our Twitter accounts and all that sort of thing. But look, we're 3 episodes in. We're new to this, so just stick with us, man.
Something. Just take it easy.
Right. See you guys.